I heard about it, and I did see it, and it's a Photoshop.
What's going on, guys? It's Ross here, back on MGF Customs for a very special custom LEGO minifigure showcase video, because today we are finally doing the proper showcase on Peter 3, Andrew Garfield's The Amazing Spider-Man for my Spider-Man No Way Home project, but to also celebrate the legacy of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and that showcase on my channel from all those years ago, with now this fully remastered version of the Amazing Spider-Man suit, fully revisited as a new painted custom that I worked on and off throughout 2022, as you guys might have seen in my previous video comparing it to the original 2014 version. We still have a few new things to cover in this video, like the unmasked Andrew Garfield heads on the finished suit, along with some slight changes actually to a Gwen Stacy custom to complement this minifigure that I already showed on my second channel actually. But I'm really excited to finally give this figure that I'm so happy with, one of my absolute best painted minifigures I have ever done, its proper video to give you a look at the figure in full with all the variations like the unmasked heads on it, and just to have a good time celebrating the Amazing Spider-Man 2 in this video one more time, because that was still a trilogy that we never got to see finished, even if we now have closure with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man from No Way Home. Anyway, guys, with all of that said, let's get started. Alright, here we go with Andrew Garfield's The Amazing Spider-Man revisited as a custom painted LEGO minifigure in 2022, 8 years later. And when getting started on the new Peter 3 custom after Spider-Man No Way Home released, I kind of knew going in that I wanted this minifigure to look very different from the original. And actually, in my previous video, I never mentioned that I intentionally never looked back at the 2014 version until I was close to completion on this new one. And so when I also got started, the number one things that I took inspiration from were Phoenix Customs and Rex Mini Bricks collab printed minifigure that they have coming out later this year now, and then also some inspiration from Jocka Brick for the boot design. And otherwise, I took my own creative liberty in making the blue parts of the suit, because obviously it's a little bit more vibrant on my custom minifigure than the suit actually is in any of the movies, and that was entirely intentional on my part. That's what I wanted to do, just as my own personal preference. But I don't want to retread too much territory here, because of course you've already seen this minifigure, and if you've seen my previous video, you've definitely already seen quite a bit and heard quite a bit about it. So just to get it out of the way, obviously this is a fully 100% hand painted minifigure. Literally everything you're seeing here was all painted by hand. This started off as a blank minifigure. So I think one of the most important things to highlight about painting all of this webbing by hand, you know, the meshing pattern on the blue sections before ever getting to any of that webbing, when painting Spider-Man suits by hand, it really is a game of organization, pre-planning, making sure you're intentional about where every line is going to go from beginning to end. All of those things have to be factored in and considered before you put any paint onto plastic. And so with all of that in mind, one of the most fundamental key aspects about painting Spider-Man masks in LEGO is making sure you get the lenses right, you know, the eyes correct. You have to spend a while shaping them to make sure you are satisfied, because there's really no going back. And they are also the basis, the foundation for all of the webbing that continues off from them and then wrapping around the entire mask. And you also have to keep all of this symmetrical. I really struggle with this back middle line here. It took me about 3 tries to get that properly centered and aligned with the designs of the eyes and everything on the front, and it's very time consuming, as you can imagine. It's very slow, and that's why I worked on this guy on and off, took a break and worked on the Batman, you know, eventually made the integrated suit and finished that minifigure right, and then came back to this, because there's only so much you can take really when painting minifigures that are this detailed, this organized, and trying to do it this cleanly. It was all very intentional. It was very challenging, especially the belt, because the belt belt, as you probably already noticed, it starts on the torso, but it continues onto the belt piece. And I had to apply special sealers around the corners here and the edges to make sure that those were preserved. And just all these tiny little micro facets, micro considerations that go into a long, drawn out, extensive process like this. You have to be so intentional with quite literally everything that you do, because these blue streaks here that you see on the back next to the spider symbol that's painted into the pre-painted meshing texturing I already did, you know, there's no mistakes in some of this work, right? I could not make a mistake, because if I did, that would have meant screwing up the meshing painting that I already did underneath. And so, you know, sometimes the stakes are a little bit higher when painting suits like this too, higher than they ever are on other custom minifigures that I make. Another huge consideration that I am always thinking of as I go along is making sure that the paint doesn't really pile up too much, right? If you look at the leg designs, which of course do wrap around all four sides of the minifigure's legs, it's kind of insane because I was really focused on, you know, just how much layering I was doing, right? Every little bit of paint that you add, it all does slowly kind of build up in a way, and you have to be intentional and make sure that you're making as few mistakes as possible. And, you know, just all of it is really crazy. And if I go ahead and lift up one of these wrists here, you can see that I do actually have kind of the web shooters painted in, but in a really flat, simplistic design. I was very intentional about what I painted on the sides of the wrist, and especially on the sides of the torso, trying to keep it as minimal as possible. That's why I didn't really paint anything on the sides of the shoulders here, because when you're trying to kind of prevent any tearing and eliminate friction, building up too many painted designs is not really ideal. That's why I was even worried about just painting a little bit of the belt design onto the lower side of the torso here. And also, I'm sure you've already noticed the hands are blank. Now, those of you guys who have been following me for a number of years will know that I generally don't like to paint on minifigure hands. Even if you steer clear of the edges or if you get creative with it, eventually that paint is likely to come off. And I'm always about longevity with my custom minifigures. That's why I'm always big on preparing the parts, and painting things onto the hands where they are the most likely to rub off, not a good idea. But now with all of that out of the way, I want to give you a look at the Andrew Garfield head that of course you might have already seen on the channel previously, but here it is on the finished painted suit, right? Because the last time you saw this, there were no painted legs, there was no painted back, there was no complete Andrew Garfield custom minifigure, and now here he is with a fantastic printed head, an official Lego head actually appearing in the recent Queer Eye set that came out, and then a custom Elvis piece that I sanded down considerably and then repainted as well. And I think that this is just the perfect Andrew Garfield likeness. I love this printed head for him so much. There's also an alternate smiling expression, which I don't think looks quite as much like Andrew Garfield, but man, this primary expression is better than anything I would have painted, and certainly better than anything I could have hoped for, because that was always a struggle years ago when I really couldn't paint faces 8 years ago in 2014. Andrew Garfield's head, and I never had that for the original custom, so this really completes it for me, and it looks so awesome next to the updated Gwen Stacy minifig from 2014. Having the 2022 version now fully redone and revisited with the modern painting skills that I've acquired over the last 8 years has meant so much to me, because of course the Amazing Spider-Man 2 showcase meant so much to me, and I know some of you guys who were around for that time, and hopefully this minifigure has delivered. I can't wait to continue the work on Tobey Maguire. He's coming along really great, but for now, let's go ahead and wrap up this very special showcase on a very special Spider-Man in the form of Peter 3. Alright everyone, there you go. That is it for this showcase for the Spider-Man No Way Home project on Andrew Garfield's Peter 3, The Amazing Spider-Man. And to close out the video, of course, I got a few other minifigures out here. Green Goblin, Dane DeHaan's version from the movie, of course, Jamie Foxx's Electro back there, along with the Rhino by Legoholic at the time. Still one of my favorite builds ever. Alexei Sitsevich, and of course now this updated version of my 2014 Gwen Stacy with the same body, but a custom painted and slightly modified Hermione Granger hairpiece and Hermione Granger face, and I still can't decide if this actually looks good enough as a makeshift update to the old Gwen Stacy minifigure or not, but I still thought it would be a cool thing to include here at the end of the video because, I mean, of course, as I said at the start, celebrating the Amazing Spider-Man 2, despite all of its flaws and issues, it was still such an impactful moment in the history of my channel with that video that I will never forget. Setting up the fog machine for the intro shot, or just pushing my painting skills to their limits at the time with the original 2014 suit, and of course the Green Goblin back here was still with some of my favorite paint work I've ever done, especially with that painted face. And I mean, it was just a really cool time, and it was really fun being able to go back and revisit Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man suit in Lego, as I've said numerous times by now. And I'd love to hear what you thought down in the comments below, and of course you can always drop the video a like if you did enjoy it, or especially if you were around during that era for the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And of course, guys, I'm working on Tobey Maguire's Peter 2 right now. I already painted the entire mask, and I'm well into the process of painting the suit meshing. And if you want to catch up with all the progress that I'm doing on that figure, it's all already been going up over on the Patreon page down below. And I'm going to be starting up a tutorial series over there, kind of going over individually different parts of making Spider-Man suits, like the mask, the torso, arms, and just kind of break down all these processes in painting Spider-Man suits that you heard a lot about in this video here with Peter 3. I am losing my voice though, so if you'd like to see all my Photoshop edits and previews, of course, of my custom minifigures that are going up over on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as always, you can find those links down in the description below, and I hope to see you guys there. Now, with all of that said, I'm excited because after the Tobey Maguire suit is done, I'm going to be doing some more Avengers Endgame minifigures, as you guys voted in the poll that I put up on the channel recently. So I'm excited to kind of start alternating the projects as promised, and it's going to be a fun time. They're both going to get done, and I'm just really passionate about these last two projects, guys. And thanks for hanging out with me to take one last in-depth look at this suit and this figure. And keep creating, and take care. Bye-bye. Are you in the new Spider-Man? Nope. But that's you in this photo. Looks like me. So then you're in the movie, pal. It's a Photoshop. This clip, clearly of you recently and not in 2014, in the Spider-Man suit, is Photoshopped. Yep. It just leaked again now in 4K. You've literally been caught in 4K, buddy. Are you sure this isn't you? I'm not the werewolf. You're literally in the suit right now. It's a Photoshop. What about this leaked pic with you and Toby and Tom all in your Spidey suits? Photoshop. So why have you been talking in your American accent this entire time? Photoshop. Well, can you explain this snap of Gwen alive and well? It's blank. Exactly, you NDA signing, Kevin Feige fearing motherfucker.